Vegadog. January 12, 2024. According to classified intelligence reports, a major assassination attempt against President Ibrahim Traoré was thwarted at the last moment behind the event. Lies and international conspiracy and dark plans to change the fate of the country at the center of the incident is the incredible sacrifice of a young soldier whose identity remains undisclosed. This mysterious soldier, hailed as the people's hero, saved not just a president, but the hope of a nation. But who is this hero? Why is his identity being kept secret, and what really happened in the square that day? This is the extraordinary story of an ordinary soldier. As the hammer and wind danced dust clouds over the city, Lieutenant Amadou Sawadogo's eyes strained through the sand particles, focusing on the eastern gate of the presidential palace. The 27-year-old guard officer had been serving on President Ibrahim Traoré's personal protection team. For the past 3 months, Burkina Faso's young leader had made many enemies in his relentless struggle to free the country from corruption and foreign interference. Amadou had dreamed of this moment since childhood, serving his country, being part of change. He had grown up in the poor neighborhoods of Bobbio, Lassou, where his mother sold tomatoes at the market to pay for his school fees. Now he stood beside the president in his military uniform that morning. Everything felt different. Amadou's sixth sense was warning him during the morning briefing. He noticed the tension on the face of intelligence officer Lieutenant Colonel Rago. The man's hands were trembling, his eyes constantly darting to the door. "We must be careful today," Urao had said, his voice rougher than usual. "The president has a public meeting this afternoon. We're doubling security measures at 2 p.m. President Traoré set off with his convoy toward Plusdanasum. Amadou took his position in the Land Cruiser, immediately behind the president's Mercedes security codes, echoed on the Radio Eagle 1 en route, all units in position as they approached the square. Amadou scanned the crowd. Thousands had gathered, Burkina Faso flags in their hands, hope on their faces, but Amadou's eyes caught something else. A group of men in the northern corner of the square, behaving differently from the other. Alpha 3 suspicious movement to the north, he said into his radio. The response came without delay. Copy checking it out as the president exited the car. The crowd cheered enthusiastically. Traoré smiled at his guards before mingling with the people. Amadou took position on the president's right side, eyes constantly alert. That's when it happened. A man lunged forward from the crowd, pulling a metallic object from his pocket. Amadou's brain analyzed the situation in a thousandth of a second. Grenade! Watch out! He shouted, throwing his body in front of the president. The world seemed to slow down. Amadou saw the man pull the grenade pin. Other guards were reaching for their weapons, but it was too late. Amadou ran and threw himself at the attacker. He wrestled the grenade from the man's hand and hurled it with all his strength away from the crowd, toward an empty area. Just as he threw the grenade, the attacker drew a pistol from his waist. Gunshots echoed across the square. As Amadou shielded the president with his body, bullets struck his back and shoulder. The grenade exploded in mid-air shrapnel, scattering everywhere thanks to Amadou's quick reaction. The explosion hadn't harmed anyone, but he himself was severely wounded. As he fell to the ground, he closed his eyes with the peace of seeing that Traoré was safe when he awoke in the hospital. Room 3 days had passed. His right arm and shoulder were wrapped in bandages. the wound marks on his back aching with every breath. But he was alive when the door opened. President Traoré entered. His face bore an expression mixed with concern and gratitude. "Amadou," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I don't know how to thank you. I did my duty, Mr. President," Amadou whispered. Even speaking hurt, Pra shook his head. "No, you went far beyond your duty thanks to you. Not just I, but our country's future was saved." In the following days, details of what happened emerged. A widespread conspiracy involving Lieutenant Colonel Ouedraogo had been exposed. The group, backed by foreign powers, had planned to eliminate Traoré and destabilize the country again during his weeks in the hospital. Amadou never lacked visitors. His mother came every day, both pride and worry in her eyes. Her friends from the market brought him fruit, telling him he was the country's hero. But Amadou didn't see himself as a hero. He was just a soldier fighting for something he believed in: his country's independence and his people's future. On the day of his discharge, President Traoré organized a special ceremony. At the ceremony broadcast on national television, Amadou was awarded the country's highest medal for bravery. Lieutenant Sawado said Traoré, pinning the medal, "A country with sons like you has a bright future. Burkina's true wealth is not in gold mines, but in brave children like you." Amadou spoke looking at the cameras. "I am just one of millions of Burkinabés. We are all ready to give our lives for this country, because Burkina Faso is not just a piece of land. It is our home, our future, our hope." When the ceremony ended, as Amadou left the palace, a young soldier approached him. There was a familiar light in his eyes, the same idealism and determination Amadou had possessed years ago. "Lieutenant," said the young soldier, "I want to be like you." Amadou smiled and placed his hand on the young soldier's shoulder. "Don't be like me, son. Be better than yourself. Our country needs you." As the sun set over Ouagadougou, Amadou walked through the city streets. His wounds still hurt, but his spirit was at peace. The change President Traoré had started would continue, and thousands of young people like Amadou would continue to be guardians of this change. The red star of Burkina shone even brighter in the sky. Amadou Sawado's sacrifice had saved not just a president, but a nation's hope. And this story would be told from generation to generation, reminding young Burkinabés of the true meaning of patriotism. That night, Ibrahim Traoré wrote in his journal today, "I learned once again that leadership is not about others being ready to die for you, but proving that you are worth living for others. Amadou gave me this chance. I will not waste it." And Burkina Faso continued to walk toward the future with stronger steps, with this new page written in the blood of its young guardian. 6 months later, when Amadou returned to his Presidential Guard duty, life was no longer the same, though the wounds on his back had healed. The memories of that day remained vivid every morning. When he woke up, he looked at the bravery medal on his chest and felt the weight of his responsibility. One evening, during a shift change, President Traoré summoned him to his office. When he entered, he found the president looking out the window at Ouagadougou's lights. "Amadou," said Traoré, without turning, "I must ask you something. That day when you saw the grenade, what did you think?" Amadou hesitated for a moment. "I didn't think, Mr. President. I just reacted." Traoré turned a thoughtful expression on his face. That's why you and people like you are this country's true heroes without calculating. Without considering personal gain, you simply do what's right. But Mr. President Amadou continued, I only did my duty. You are the real hero every day. You risk your life trying to change this country. Traoré smiled. Perhaps we are both heroes, Amadou's soldiers fighting on different fronts. After that night, a special bond formed between Amadou and Tro. The president began to see the young officer not just as a guard, but as a trusted advisor. Amadou's perspective from the village, his finger on the people's pulse, helped shape Traoré's policies. One day, Amadou was given an unexpected assignment. Traoré appointed him as his special representative for youth programs. The mission was to travel across the country, instilling the spirit of patriotism and sacrifice in young Burkinabés. His first stop was his birthplace Lasso. When he went to the school in his old neighborhood, he saw the excitement in the children's eyes. A little girl raised her hand, Lieutenant Amadou. Did you really save the president? Amadou smiled. Yes, but what's really important isn't saving the president. What's important is that each of you has the power to save this country inside you. I just used that power while talking with the children. He remembered his own childhood. His mother's words while selling vegetables at the market came to mind. Amadou, remember being poor is not shameful, but giving up on your dreams is. As he continued his country tour, Amadou met thousands of young people. Every speech he gave, the same message: the future of Burkina Faso is in you. What will change this country is not weapons or money, but your courage and sacrifice. However, not everything was going smoothly. The forces behind the conspiracy were still active one night while staying at a hotel in Kodogu. His room door opened silently. Amadou sat up in bed, reaching for the gun under his pillow. "Calm down, Amadou," said a voice from the darkness. "I haven't come to harm you." When the man's face became visible in the moonlight, Amadou recognized him. Major Kabore, former intelligence officer, Wedriogo's assistant. "What do you want?" Amadou asked, not lowering his weapon. "I came to warn you," said Gabor. "There's a new plan against the president this time. Bigger, more organized, and you are one of the targets." Amadou's heartbeat quickened. "Why are you telling me?" Gabor took a deep breath. "Because what you did that day in the square, it made me think. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe Traoré really can change this country in the following hours." Gabor explained the details of the conspiracy. The group backed by foreign powers was planning simultaneous attacks at strategic points across the country. The goal was to create chaos and prepare ground for a military coup. Amadou immediately called Shaw. He transmitted the information through encrypted conversation. The president immediately convened the Security Council. In the following days, members of the conspiracy were captured one by one through covert operations after this incident. Amadou's mission became even more important. He was no longer just an inspiring figure for youth, but also a critical figure ensuring the country's security. A year later, on January 12, 2025 grand ceremony was held on the anniversary of the assassination attempt. Thousands gathered at Blasdine. As Amadou stood beside Traoré on stage, he looked at the crowd. The sight moved him. Young, old, women, men, everyone was there with Burkina Faso flags. Traoré took the microphone a year ago today. In this square, not just an assassination attempt was prevented, a moment that changed this country's destiny occurred. Lieutenant Amadou Sawadogo prevented not just my death, but the death of. Hope the crowd erupted in applause. Amadou stepped forward, his voice emotional. Dear citizens, that day, I only acted on your behalf. Each of you carries the same courage within Burkina Faso's place in the world is not to be an exploited country, will be a proud nation that writes its own destiny, controls its own resources. At the end of his speech, a young girl came on stage. She held a scarf woven in red, green and yellow colors. Lieutenant Amadou, said the girl, my mother knitted this scarf. She told me to give it to you because you are our family's hero. Amadou took the scarf, his eyes welling up. At that moment he understood that his sacrifice was much more than just saving a president. He had saved a nation's hope, its faith in the future years past. Amadou continued to rise in the Burkina Faso armed forces when he reached the rank of general. The country was a different place. Traoré's reforms had borne fruit. Corruption had decreased the economy, had strengthened education, had spread in 2030. Amadou decided to retire on his last day of service. Traoré visited him. My friend, said Traoré, thanks to you we were able to complete this journey. Now it's the new generation's turn. Amadou nodded. Mr. President, I only did my duty as a soldier. The real success belongs to you and our people. No, Amadou, Traoré replied. You weren't just a soldier. You were this country's conscience, courage, and hope your story will live forever. In retirement, Amadou returned to his hometown of Bobo Dioulasso. There he established a youth center every day. He taught young Burkinabés lessons, encouraged sacrifice and patriotism. One evening, as the sun was setting, Amadou was sitting in his garden. When his granddaughter approached, Grandpa, said the little girl, my teacher said you're a hero. Is it true? Amadou smiled, stroking his granddaughter's head. No, dear, I'm not a hero. I was just someone who was in the right place at the right time. The real heroes are the people who work every day to make this country a better place. Your teacher, doctors, farmers, mothers, fathers, they're all heroes. Can I be a hero too? Asked the little girl. Of course you can say it, Amadou. All you need to do is love your country and work for it. The rest comes naturally. As the sun disappeared over Burkina's horizon, Amadou was at peace. He had fulfilled his life's purpose. Now, the future was in the hands of his granddaughter and her generation. And so, Lieutenant Amadou Sawadogo's story would live forever as one of the most important pages in Burkina Faso's history. A soldier's courage had changed a nation's destiny, and this story would continue to inspire future generations.